Hi, everyone, and welcome to this interview with Stephanie Hobert. Now, guess what? Stephanie is not just a distinguished Toastmaster, but right now she's also Division Director and the founder of the ESAR Speak Club. And she's here today with us to tell us about her journey into the Distinguished Toastmaster Award from Toastmasters International. But before we start on this journey, I found out something about Stephanie, and I want to ask her about that. Stephanie, you're not just a Toastmaster, you are a sailor. Now, can you tell us, how did you get around to sailing and why sailing?
It was really unique. Sailing actually just discovered me about 5 years ago. And I had always thought that you sail from a harbor, which is an industrial part, and you just sail somewhere, until I saw a sailboat cruise in front of the skyline of Valencia. And I just thought, oh, this is so beautiful. And I want to do this one day. And I did. 3 months later, I was onto the seas and sailing.
Nice. So you sail on boats which go onto the sea, not just like some small boat which is on the Tagan Sea or something.
Well, I would do that as well, and it's good for sailing practice, but I prefer big boats, preferably classical boats made of wood with large international crews. That's where I really feel at home, and that's what I really enjoy.
Perfect. Sounds great. Now, let's jump in straight into your Toastmasters speaking journey. Now, DTM for a lot of people is something that is so far away. It's so far away. People never even think about it. They're like, now, I mean, that's going to take me another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then there are people like you who actually take it upon themselves and actually finish it. So how long did you take for your DTM?
I think my journey took about 6 years, but I have to admit, I didn't like public speaking very much. So I had intervals in my career where I just didn't do any speaking, and I was more caring about the leadership path that was, or the leadership side of Toastmasters. And it doesn't really help you if you don't do the speeches, like the other way around. It doesn't really help you if you hold a lot of speeches, but you don't do the leadership part of Toastmasters.
Mhm.
So I've just taken my time. We call it a self-paced learning program, and that's just what I did.
5 to 6 years. You have people around who've been around for 10 to 15 years and have not come close to the DTM. And let me ask
suppose
you.
You could actually.
Sorry, you said something?
I suppose you could do it in 2 to 3 years if you were really at it. But people tend to have a life between like work and Toastmasters.
Definitely. Let me ask you this. Out of those 5 to 6 years, do you still remember the first speech that you made, your icebreaker?
You know what? I actually do. The icebreaker is the part where you want your audience to get to know you, or your club that you're about to join, or that you have just joined. And I think in my case, it was a lot of I just wanted to give the framework for who I was and what I identified with, which was living abroad, which was large part living in Japan as well. And the funny thing is, I had this speech ready, and of course I wanted to create a speech that people wanted to hear more after my icebreaker, and I could not find a title. And just the day before I was going to hold the speech, I was actually talking to a very nice colleague of mine, saying could you think of a title? And while I was describing the speech, the title came to mind, and it was Amplitudes. And I thought it just mixed very well with what I had to talk about, and also earthquakes, which were part of my speech. So I was happy with that title.
Earthquakes?
Yes.
Don't tell me you were around when an earthquake went around you.
Oh, well, Japan tends to have like 3,600 earthquakes a year, which statistically make it like 10 a day. And I was actually in Japan when we had this bad Kobe earthquake.
Okay.
I was in Tokyo. It could be felt there as well, but very fortunately, I was not in Kobe at that time.
Wow, earthquakes. And
Yeah.
that in your first speech. Okay, now you've told us about your first speech. Now tell us about your favorite speech in all those 5 to 6 years.
I think my favorite speech I actually didn't hold in my club. I was invited to an initiative where Toastmasters were cooking and eating and speaking, which was very nice. And I had wanted to hold a speech all the time. It was a motivational speech, and it was called The Family Tailor. And it describes how I was married to an Egyptian person, and we were with his family tailor, and was trying to get a nice suit tailored for me. And he kept going, oh, something is wrong with your wife. She's not built the proper way. And the fold of the pants on one side, like wound around my leg, like a vine. And it was really strange. And every time he kept mending it, and he kept finding another mistake in my European build, until finally we figured out that he actually had made me a man's pants. And he had decided for me to wear my crown jewels on the left. And that's actually what caused this crease to behave in an unnatural way. So it didn't go up straight. And the essence of this speech was, if somebody has a very strong opinion about you, you better want to make sure you check his credentials.
Oh my God, tell me about this. I mean, next time I go to get myself a suit stitched manually, I'm going to take some advice from you before I do that.
You better do, because you want to look good. You don't want to look weird.
Okay. Speeches, like you said, mentioned earlier, are just a part of the DTM, right? There's a lot of leadership which goes on. And I think for a lot of people who don't embark on that pathway, really don't manage to finish the DTM. I mean, you have a bit of communication and you better have a bit of leadership. But if you don't do both, you can't actually get the DTM and close it. So which part of leadership in DTM was something that you enjoyed?
Well, in the legacy system, you really had those two parts branching out. You were holding your speeches on one side, but on the other hand, you also had to perform in meeting roles at the very basic. And they actually helped you to your listening skills, or timing, or being an R counter. All of that really helps you for your own speeches, and incorporate the knowledge that you actually learn by doing that. And then you have other parts where you have to be an officer in your club, which is also of vital importance, I should say, because you take on responsibility, and that actually gives you credibility as well. So you can much better talk about the topics that you're actually passionate for, and you can take it further. You can be a district officer, for example, an area director or a division director, and that's when the real leadership begins. And
thank you for mentioning that, because I remember you in the club. You know, there's one thing I keep telling people, you know, there are people who take some role seriously, and then there is Stephanie. And then especially the sergeant at arms, a role that many people think this is not something you can do, add real quality to, and how you change the way the Munich Prostmasters even stored their material. Because for many decades, the Munich Prostmasters never had a way, and you brought in some order. And I think that we still have the same box and order that you set up. And then you moved on to do VP Education, President, and Area Director. And right now, you're the Division Director. So tell us a bit about, how did your DTM experience is helping you right now in your Division Director role?
Well, one of the parts of the DTM is that you have to hold a district officer role, which would be an area director or which could also be a division director. So of course, when I was area director, that helped me for my DTM. And as the current role of division director will help my second DTM, which I'm currently working on, obviously. And it's very nice because these roles are really building up on each other. If you are, for example, you're a sergeant at arms, you're taking care of the stuff, or you are vice president of education, you're actually helping people find their education goals. And that's actually the toughest work. That's the office where you have to do most. And then when you're an area director, you're actually helping a couple of clubs to achieve their goals, their DCP points. And this reflects back actually, if you're a member and you want to go forward, right? You want to get your education awards and so on. And that's also what you can help with. If you're an area director, you can talk to the vice presidents of education and just show them how it's done, or support some answers or support material for those clubs to actually be better.
Yeah.
And if the clubs are better, this also reflects back on the members, on the member experience.
Nice. So I'm going to take one step back into the DTM. You know, one of the projects that a lot of DTMs talk about is their HPL. What was your high performance leadership project, and how did it go?
Actually, the normal way would be that you have held a couple of speeches, have gone through a couple of manuals, that you are actually little bit advanced, and then when you get anywhere near the DTM, then you realize you have to do a high performance leadership project. And I have a very favorite Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, who keeps saying opportunities are like girls, they only knock once. It's Ineke van Merlin, and this was an opportunity and I just had to take it. And I was on my way to complete the competent communicator, or I was doing my advanced communicator bronze. So at a very early stage, actually. And I was talking to somebody who told me about the expat in the city fair. And I heard expats and I thought Toastmasters, and it was perfect because the English-speaking Toastmasters in Munich actually do have a lot of members from the expat community. So for me, it was very important to actually bring Toastmasters to the expat in the city fair. And we had a booth there. We organized that. I had several teams. I had a promotion team. I had a welcome committee. And that's the part of leadership, actually. You're overseeing all those teams that you have. You do not necessarily have to do everything by yourself. You can supply ideas and you can support your teams, but your teams will have to execute what needs to be done. And of course, you also need to let them do like how they imagine it. You cannot be micromanaging. So you have to put your trust also into your teams.
Sure. No, that's amazing, because, you know, I was an expat when I came to Germany, and I think a lot of Toastmasters have been expats, especially the ones from outside Germany. And I think they know how it feels like when you go to that expat fair. And it's interesting to see that you were able to combine both and actually get people, volunteers, to help in that HPL project. Now, we all know that the DTM journey is long and hard, and only for those who persevere. So can you share one part of the DTM journey where you thought, oh my God, this is a challenge. This is taking me down. Is that something you could share with us?
I mean, there were a couple of ups and downs. For example, when my club, the Prostmasters, seemed like they were losing some energy. And of course, you wanted to change something, or the decision is there. Do you really want to stick with the club, or do you want to change clubs? And then you realize, no, if you wanted to have more energy, it probably will have to be yourself who actually does something about it. And in the beginning, that was a bit hard because I didn't really know where to start. But when the energy started picking up, that was a very big reward for myself. And another challenge was when I was area director, I was actually helping 6 different clubs. And you need to spread your attention between them. And at the same time, I was getting under a little bit of time pressure because I also had to finish my last 2 speaking manuals. So that was a bit of a challenge, looking after the clubs, giving them all my support, and also thinking of speech topics and crafting my speeches that I needed for my advanced communicator gold.
Nice. So I have 2 more questions, and we're going to come to an end to this interview. This one, I worked along with you, so I know what challenges you faced. And I thought this was something amazing to pull off, to be part of a club. And then when the club gets big enough to realize that it's time to split and start a new club. So you were a founder of the ESAR Speak. Were you doing your DTM when you founded the new club, or had you just finished?
I was actually on my way to my DTM, and founding ESAR Speak was one portion I had to do. You need to found a club, or you need to be a club sponsor, or you need a club to be a club mentor or a club coach in the legacy system. But I did not do it solely for my DTM. I think it also helped Prostmasters, because when a club becomes too large, and I think we were at 64 members, then you miss out on a lot of opportunities. For example, like I said, if you're working on your DTM, you need to be a club officer for a year. And if you have 64 members, it takes you 9 years statistically for everybody to have been a club officer. Yeah. So a healthy size for a club would be, I should say, 25 to 30. And the question was obviously like, how are we going to split the club? Because people are like, no, this is family, don't separate us, and we want to stick together. So I had to do it on a volunteer basis. And surprisingly enough, it did work, and it worked out really well. ESAR Speak is a very good club these days. They're on their way to their President Distinguished status. And there was a status even like half a year back when it looked like they might actually overtake Prostmasters. Obviously not in the rich history of Prostmasters, like all the area directors and division directors and district directors that came from Prostmasters and all these excellent speakers. But they look very good. And immediately after chartering, ESAR Speak actually within 3 months achieved President Distinguished, which was a miracle in itself. So this is a very good club, and I'm very proud of it. And it has excellent officers. So
no, definitely. I mean, I watched the progress that the ESAR Speak keeps making over the years, and the energy that they have as a club. And it's amazing to see that when you split 2 clubs, that another club can still have its own energy and its own vibes and keep progressing. So thank you very much for that. Now, to close our interview, I have a question for all the future Toastmasters who persevere and who want to make their DTM, with pathways. And you already shared with us that you're working on your 2nd DTM. Now, for somebody who's finished a DTM and is working on your 2nd DTM, can you share 2 to 3 tips that, the future DTMs can take home and work on?
Yes, we're currently working on pathways. So for me, it's a challenge as well to do my 2nd DTM in pathways, because I did the first one in the legacy system. I think it's a bit easier now in pathways, but you have to regularly hold your speeches. So you want to keep that up. And there is a very important point I find as well in level 4 and level 5, you get all these interesting projects. So if you want to take it the easy way, you can just talk about a project. But if you want to do it the proper way for your own personal learning experience, you really want to go through the projects and experience them and find out how to do them, how to get on about them, what helps you, what doesn't help you, where can you get other people to help you, where can you support other people. This is an experience that you cannot really transfer by just holding a speech. You have to make the experience yourself and then talk about this experience to your club, to your audience, or wherever you want to hold your speech. And I very strongly recommend you not to skip the opportunity to actually make this experience.
Stephanie, thank you so much for, being part of Toastmasters, and not just being a member or a passive member. You're being an active member, an active officer, division director serving right now, a club founder, helping the expats in Munich, and now you're working on your second DTM. So for all the DTMs out there, this is the person, Stephanie is the DTM that you can watch out and emulate. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
And sure, if you have questions on your way to the DTM, feel free to contact me.